Which is better, the ZTE Blade A7 Prime or the Visible R2 by ZTE? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Hi everyone, this is Kevin here, coming at you with my comparison video between the ZTE Blade A7 Prime and the Visible R2 by ZTE. I know that many of you have been very interested in this comparison because both of these phones are exclusive to Visible and are budget devices. Now, if you've never heard of Visible, they are a new and upcoming wireless carrier that is based off of Verizon's network. In fact, they're actually owned by Verizon, but what's really cool about the carrier is that you get unlimited talk, text, data, and hotspot for just $40 per month. Now, both of these phones were purchased through Visible's online store, so definitely make sure to check that out to buy either of these two devices. Now, the ZTE Blade A7 Prime was launched about a month ago, so it's still a very new device, and the Visible R2 was launched about 8 months ago, so it's a bit older. You can buy the ZTE Blade A7 Prime for just $99, or you can get it for free if you swap in one of your old Android phones, which is actually what I did. So I did get the phone for free, which is awesome, and the Visible R2 is being offered for just $99. So very inexpensive and very affordable. Now with the ZTE Blade A7 Prime, we're getting a 6.09-inch display at 720p with a 284 ppi and 19.5 by 9 aspect ratio. So we are getting a pretty nice and modern design here with a teardrop notch at the top and a little bit of a chin at the bottom. But the phone does feature a very good screen to body ratio, and the display itself does look really nice despite it being just 720p. It looks really clear, the colors are awesome, and overall, I really don't have any complaints about it, especially for a budget phone. And the Visible R2 features a slightly smaller display at 5.5 inches. It's also LCD and 720p. It features a PPI of 295 and an 18 by 9 aspect ratio. Another thing to keep in mind here is that with the ZTE Blade A7 Prime, we do get rounded corners here, and the corners are squared off with the Visible R2. Now with the R2, we do get slightly larger bezels on the top and bottom, as you can see here. So definitely keep that in mind. But I know that some people do prefer to have kind of the more traditional design versus having a phone with a notch at the top. But let me know in the comment section below which device and which design you prefer. But we are getting a bigger display, no doubt, with the A7 Prime. It's a little bit thinner and taller since it is 19.5 by 9 compared to 18 by 9. But you can see when you line up the bottoms of the two displays here, the Blade A7 Prime is certainly the taller phone of the two. Now the phones actually are pretty similar in size, but the full body of the Blade A7 Prime is definitely bigger than the Visible R2. But despite the Visible R2 being just $19, it is a very nice looking device. It features a great looking display. I would say that both phones definitely feature much better displays than you'd think you would get considering their price tag. Now up top here, both devices feature 5 megapixel front-facing cameras. With the ZTE Blade A7 Prime, we're getting 32 gigabytes of internal storage with SD card expansion, and the Visible R2 features 16 gigs of storage with SD card expansion. So you are getting twice the amount of internal storage with the ZTE Blade A7 Prime. Now neither of these two phones feature wireless charging, but they do both have fingerprint sensors here on the back. So we'll try that out, first with the Blade A7 Prime. So very quick there. You also get face unlock with both phones as well. We'll try out the Visible R2. And that was really quick too. So very quick and responsive fingerprint sensors on the back sides of both phones. And the fingerprint sensor is another feature that I really didn't expect to see with devices in this price range, since both phones are very inexpensive. I know that the Moto E6, for example, does not have a fingerprint sensor on the back, despite being the same exact price as the ZTE Blade A7 Prime. Then on the back side of the two devices, we have the camera modules. Now both phones feature just a single camera on the back with a 16 megapixel rear camera with the Blade A7 Prime and a 13 megapixel camera with the Visible R2. So neither of the two phones do feature portrait mode, which is a bit unfortunate, but something to expect in this price range. Now with the Blade A7 Prime, we are getting 3 gigabytes of RAM with the MediaTek Helio A22, and the Visible R2 has 2 gigabytes of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 425. Now, it is a bit unfortunate to see just 2 gigs of RAM with the visible R2, and also the Qualcomm Snapdragon 425 really isn't anything too special, so I do like that the Blade A7 Prime has 3 gigs of RAM and does have that MediaTek Helio A22. Now, the A22 is definitely nothing to get too excited about, but expect to get better performance with the Blade A7 Prime compared to the visible R2. Video recording with both phones maxes out at 1080p at 30 frames per second. We're getting 3,200 milliamp hours of battery capacity with the ZTE Blade A7 Prime, and the visible R2 has the same exact battery capacity at 3,200. Both phones feature Android 9 Pie. In fact, the visible R2 was just updated very recently to Pie from Oreo, which is really awesome. And both phones run a near stock version of Android. So that's always great. You really don't have any bloatware here either. So both phones feature very nicely optimized software that does work really well with the hardware. So we did already talk quite a bit about the front panels here on both devices. We do have a larger display with the Blade A7 Prime, but overall I am very impressed with the display quality on both phones. Taking a look at the left side here of the two devices, they both have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. Then on the right side, they both have the power button and volume button. You can see here that the power button on the Blade A7 Prime does feature a red accent, which is nice. Then on the top of the two phones, they both have the noise-canceling microphone and 3.5mm headphone jack. Then on the bottom of the phones, they both feature a USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and the microphone. And then on the back side of the two devices, they feature the camera module, flash, fingerprint sensor, logos, and the speaker. So these two phones actually do feature pretty similar designs. You can see that the speaker on the bottom is pretty much the same exact shape, so pretty interesting. And it is pretty apparent here that the phones are both made by the same company. Here are the boxes that both phones come in. So you can see that with the ZTE Blade A7 Prime, it does come in a more standard ZTE box, whereas the visible R2 by ZTE features a visible branded box. With both phones, we're getting a quick start guide, and we're getting a ZTE branded wall adapter, as well as USB-C cables for charging and data transfer. So pretty much the same exact items included in the box with both phones. Now, both devices do have active visible SIM cards inside of them. So let's do a speed test comparison here to see which device has the faster visible speeds. Now, I don't know why this one says Verizon Wireless and that one says Visible. I have no idea why, but they're both visible SIM cards. But of course, there are many factors that can contribute to the speeds that we're getting with either of the two phones. But let's get started. So they're connecting right now. And the speed test should start in a second here. So it looks like with both devices, we're getting kind of in the mid-teens right now, kind of moving up towards the 20s. So here are the final scores of the two phones. So with the ZTE Blade A7 Prime, I got 24.7 megabits per second down and 31.9 megabits per second up. And with the visible R2, I got 15.7 megabits per second down and 31.7 megabits per second up. So very close speeds with these two phones. I think what's most important is to see that with both devices, we are getting very fast speeds, especially for a budget prepaid carrier like Visible. Now for the next test here, I am switching over to my Wi-Fi network because we're gonna compare the speeds of the two phones when doing different tasks. So first we're gonna pull up the camera module. So 1, 2, 3, go. And it looks like it was about the same with both phones as far as the speed goes. Let's now go to Google Chrome. 1, 2, 3, go. And it looks like the ZTE Blade A7 Prime was first to pull up Google Chrome. Let's now go to yahoo.com. 1, 2, 3, go. And the ZTE Blade A7 Prime was quicker at pulling up Yahoo. Let's go to engadget.com. 1, 2, 3, go. And it looks like the Blade A7 Prime is a little bit quicker at pulling up Engadget as well, but the visible R2 does not do a bad job at keeping up, that's for sure. Now you can see in the side by side, both phones have their displays turned up at 100% brightness, and it looks like the visible R2 is a little bit brighter than the ZTE Blade A7 Prime. Let's now go to this article. 1, 2, 3, go. And the Blade A7 Prime is quicker at pulling up the article. Pinch to zoom is smooth on the Blade A7 Prime, and smooth on the R2 as well. So which phone is the better option? Well, there's no doubt that the visible R2 is the cheaper device of the two, especially being at $19 to buy it, but you can technically get the Blade A7 Prime for free if you do a swap with a older Android smartphone. So based off that, I would say that I would definitely go for the Blade A7 Prime over the Visible R2 with all things equal. But if you are looking to save some money, I mean, certainly you can get a lot more value out of the Visible R2 for $19 versus paying $99 for the Blade A7 Prime. So what I would do is I would try to do the free swap deal to get the Blade A7 Prime for free. And then if you absolutely only have $20 to spend and you want to use it with Visible, then I would go for the Visible R2. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Really curious to know which device you think is the better option. I think they're both definitely decent devices, especially when they're both very low end in price. So ZTE's collaboration here with Visible has really given us some great devices that come in at very inexpensive and affordable prices. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I have individual videos about both of these phones on the channel as well, so make sure to check those out. But give the video a thumbs up. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions. But this is Kevin here. This is the ZTE Blade A7 Prime, and this is the Visible R2. And I will see you in the next video.